Okay, so E, we are rolling. You look great. I'm honored to be back in For the Record Studios. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about what you just said about like bands? Sometimes you have
Getting
to
them
convince,
together.
yeah.
It's odd to me because bands instinctively understand the dynamics and the chemistry that you get from playing live in a room. That's what makes a band a band. So they fully know about the chemistry that occurs when you're, looking at the drummer and he's looking at the guitar player who rips out a really cool little lick that he haven't heard before, and the bass player kind of digs into the bass a little deeper, and the drummer hits the ride bell a little harder, and they all feed off that energy, that sort of thermal runaway that starts when you see a band live and they get to that fourth song and now they're really jamming, and that electricity that infuses the audience and back, it's a feedback mechanism. And so as soon as you rip that apart, and even before recent events, going back decades even, I remember bands would come in and would say, yeah, we'll do the drums first and then we'll do the bass. No, I'd say this, do it all together. And I have to try to sort of talk him into, play like you're used to, play like a band. And that came about because a lot of people in my position oftentimes would try to convince them that it was better, more isolation, one at a time, we can really focus on the drums. But I just knew that would strip away all the chemistry that you get from playing live. So I'd have to sort of talk them back into the natural form of jamming together. It also permeates the whole technology scene when a bass player will walk in and he just hands me his cable and I'm like, well, dude, where's your rig? What are you going to play through? He goes, oh, we're just going to go direct, right? I go, no, why would you think that? He goes, well, the last couple of places I went to, they just told me to plug in. And I, dude, your sound is moving the speaker and pushing the air and rattling your
Can they
center
go
around.
direct if they want to, or
We can do both,
yeah.
But we never want to preclude the use of a real piece of gear. It's just that they get talked into that.
Right.
So I often have to sort of strip away these preconceived ideas that they've learned from either being told in other places or seeing things online, that you just, everything's to a click track and you separate everybody and you do quote unquote scratch tracks. And scratch tracks are the death of any sort of energy or chemistry in a band situation, because as soon as the guitar player thinks this isn't my real track, he's not going to put anything into it, and his lack of enthusiasm is going to be subtly picked up on by the rest of the players, and they're not going to play with any real energy as well. And that's why often records don't sound as good with as much energy. That's why people say, man, you're so much better live than what we hear on the record. So yeah, I guess I have strong feelings about that.
How'd you get into all this? I've never asked you this. I've known you since I was 18. I'm 49 now.
Wow.
How'd you get into
By the way, we just had our 35th, just a couple weeks ago, our 35th anniversary here.
Yeah.
May 8th, 1988. In fact, ironic as it might be, just 2 nights ago, I had a reunion, a 30-year reunion with the two people that made it happen. The guy who called me on May 8th of 1988 said, hey, please come up here and help us. We're drowning in trying to make our record. And at the time, I had a smaller 8-track facility down off of Harbor Boulevard. And I came in, stepped into a very stressful situation. People were arguing and fighting and all that. And I had to sort of make some sense of it all. And that's what led to me partnering up with the Dr. Dream guys, and then eventually bought them out. And here I am still. So that's fun for me to think all those years and all those players and all those memories, all those great songs. But yeah, it was 35 years ago. So you were near the beginning. You probably came in late 80s, early 90s, and that was near the top of it all.
That was exactly that. I came in, Farside they were doing rigged, but there was a sound that Rochambeau had. Like the minute that you heard that was different than anything we had heard in or at least that I had heard in Orange County hardcore, pop, whatever. And my question for you is, what do you remember about that record? Because that record to me, like, it feels almost like you're a fifth member, or you would have been a fifth member of the band.
Well, I feel the same way, sort of in reverse, in that when I first heard that genre of bands, and from my recollection, it actually goes back a couple of albums earlier to Mike Rosas and Headfirst.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because if I recall correctly, I could be wrong. Fact check me on this. I think Mike, wasn't Mike in Headfirst?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So that's where it started for me. And as soon as I heard that band, as soon as I met the two Mikes, and I think Aaron might have been the bass player. I'm trying to remember all
Kevin
the
on drums,
Kevin on
John
drums,
on
right?
vocals.
I just thought, shit, that's a sound, man. Those guys got it down. The songwriting, the arrangements, the sort of style that music had, I knew immediately was something different, and it pumped me up. I was like into it. And of course, that's then when Mike went to do his thing with
Smile.
Zach.
Was that?
Remember, he was doing the Zach thing for a little bit.
And Inside Out?
Maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
I have to check, but you probably do a better job than I can of remembering. And then later on, it was not Mike who came back, Popeye. It was Jeff. Gameface came after Headfirst.
Yes.
And the same thing. As soon as
do
I heard
good.
that sound, I just said, man, that's a great fucking sound.
Well, because that's another album, that good record has an
good.
E, like, and how would you describe how those records sound or how they came out?
Well, in a word, exciting. It pumped me up. And so, when a band gets me excited, then I want to feed that excitement back. So, I get into it as much as they're into it when they're playing. So, I'm trying to, crack the whip and get them to play live and, get into their performances. And because if you don't have the performances, there isn't anything sonically you can do to, there's no make good button on the mixing board. It's got to start out there. But the bands were so good, and that style of music, which I was first introduced, by those three bands, just got me so jazzed. I just wanted to do anything I could to, capture it on tape and bring it forth. But yeah, all credit goes to the players and the creators who came up with that distinctive sound.
It's interesting because I remember when Popeye was recording Rochambeau, and he told me that at one point you gave them a tape to go listen to in the car, and it was sort of, I guess that would be the litmus test. Like, guys, if it sounds good in your car.
Sure.
And what goes into that though? Is it like when you listen to something like that, what are you listening for?
The excitement. You want to feel moved. It's no different when you read a good book or see a good film. You want to be moved. And that's what music does probably better than any other art form. That's why music is the soundtrack, literally, on films and in documentaries. It sets a mood. And there isn't any other art form, I think, that can match it. And so when you're in the car bumping the tunes, you want to feel that excitement, literally. When you're sitting in the car, that's still the best environment acoustically to, really get off on a tune other than seeing them live.
It's interesting because talking to you, and I don't know why I thought differently previous. It like so many times you speak to people and they'll talk about gear, and I love hearing about all that stuff.
Yeah.
You don't seem as concerned with gear.
No, you can't be.
So okay, so then I am correct.
Dude, no joke. I have old tapes that, if you want to look at later, down in a little drawer down there, from like an old 8-track studio. I have tapes going back to my 4-track days. I have tapes in all manner of media, VHS, Beta, old reel-to-reels, cassette tapes. You remember Springsteen, one of his best albums ever, Nebraska, was done on a 4-track Porta studio. And so a lot of my favorite music, and to this day, some of my favorite sounding music was done on primitive 4-track equipment where we had no control booth. I had to put on headphones and tell the band to play for a few seconds. Then I'd say stop, and I would have to listen back and go out and just a few miles. Okay, play again. Okay, no. And it would take, weeks to try to get a good sound. It was so laborious until we finally decided to go to a Marie Callender's construction lot one night and steal a bunch of lumber and come back, and I kind of drunkenly walked off some dimensions and we built the thing. But I mean, some of the earliest recordings I have are still the best sounding because the performance. It's all about the players, and getting them in a zone where they can create. And then it doesn't matter the technology so much. It's just the energy that comes through the speakers.